Welcome to episode 326 of Destination Linux. Destination Linux is a video podcast from the Tux Digital Network. And if you're new to the show, Destination Linux is a podcast that is perfect for all experience levels. Whether you're brand new to open source or a guru of sudo, this is the podcast for you. My name is Michael.
I'm Jill.
And I'm Ryan.
And on this week's episode, we're going to be discussing Immutable OSs, what it is, and if you need it. Then we're going to be discussing, well, actually, Ryan, it's time to rise.
I am risen.
No.
I'm
Are
standing.
you standing right now? I can't tell.
Jerk.
Your camera.
You made a short joke?
Your camera is like is not framed properly. Then we're gonna check out our tips and tricks and software picks. All of this and more coming up right now on Destination Linux.
Okay. So this week's community feedback comes from Richard. And if you want to send in your own feedback, you can go to tuxdigital.com/contact and send us an email, or join our forum at tuxdigital.com/forum. You can also find us on Discord. If you want to hang out, game with the community, or just chat about Linux, go to tuxdigital.com/discord. Richard writes us to say, "Hi, Jill, Ryan, and Michael. I wanted to offer some feedback on the discussion of open source alternatives to OpenAI's GPT chat in episode 317. The concept of open source as applied to LLMs, which are large language models, and other machine learning models is a bit more complex than for conventional software. The FLOSS community may need to do a bit of rethinking about how licensing will apply to these new tools, similar to how the AGPL came along in response to use of code over a network and the SaaS model. You have at least three components: the training data, the code specificity, the structure of the model into which to feed the training data, also separately the code with which one to perform inference with the trained model, front ends, etc., and the model weights once trained, each of which could, in theory, be licensed completely differently." This is interesting because you've got these different components that make up what we use in ChatGPT, Google Bard, and those things to basically train these. And if all three are licensed differently, this creates a situation, I would imagine, Michael, in which someone could say, hey, we're open source, but not really be, what do we call that? Open source washing that we see sometimes
Open washing,
happen?
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So there is an element that could happen. There's also the case of like someone having source available and then calling that open source when that's not actually open source. So the term open source specifically means that you're able to see it, use it, and not be sued by using it. And source available means that you can just see it, but it's still technically proprietary. So for that context, it is possible to have a different license for each of these pieces. And it's very important to have a fully open source thing in this case. But also it's kind of like, is it a good idea to have it open source in regards to, is it a safe thing to have? Because there are a lot of things that people are worried about with AI and what it could be done in the hands of the wrong type of person. And there's also the case of maybe there could be multiple licensing things. And there's even a interesting thing that's happening with Facebook, or Meta, whatever. They have started opening their models in I think it's called Llama, and they're opening their models to be accessible for people who submit and go through a process of being vetted and that sort of thing. But then you get access to it, but otherwise it's not completely open. So there's that sort of approach. So I think that there is some element that we're going to have to think about, what's the best approach for AI. And I have no idea what that would be.
I mean, maybe we should explore that in a future episode, but I kind of get what you're saying. To me, today there is pockets of code that is in the open source community that can be used for very nefarious purposes, such as hacking and other things.
Sure.
So your point, though, is that AI is more dangerous than anything we've had prior.
Yeah.
And therefore, we need to look at it differently of how do you frame this up in an open source environment properly.
Yeah, not to say that it shouldn't be open, just in the sense of we have to look at it in a different perspective because it's a whole other thing. This is not some piece of code that existing. This is something that allows you to make your own code and what that entails and as well, because the licensing is very complicated, not only in the fact of who's using it, but also in the fact of what it's being made. Because if it takes code from other places and then gives you that code output, whose code is it? Is it the code that they originally took from this piece, so they didn't take the whole thing, they took bits and pieces? Or is it the AI's code now? Or is it the person who requested it? Like, whose code is it? So there's licensing nuance all over this that there's a lot to discuss and deal with in terms of like not only just the three components that was mentioned in the feedback, but also the output of what the AI does as well has to be.
So you're saying like, hey, Google Bard could go out there or ChatGPT and give you code to solve your problem. You ask it to write you code to do X, Y, Z.
Right.
You don't know where that code's coming from, or even if it's licensed to be open for somebody to be reutilizing that code, but they're using it because they got it from ChatGPT or Google Bard.
They claim that it's open. The code that they sourced is open. At least some of them claim this. So it is possible that it's open, but you don't know what license that they're using there, because it could be MIT open, it could be BSD license, it could be a GPL. And if it's GPL, then that's a different set of circumstances that you have to deal with versus MIT and BSD.
Interesting.
So like,
GPL version 2 and then GPL version 3, and that can be very complex.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like with the case of MIT and BSD, you could take open source code and do whatever you want with it, and you don't really have to do anything of any requirements. There's basically just take the code and do what you want. You could even make it closed if you want with those things. Whereas GPL, you have to obey the GPL and release as GPL. But if you're taking code from this AI and you don't even know that it was released as GPL, then how do you know that you need to release it as GPL?
Oh, simple, Michael. I just prompt the AI that I only want an MIT licensed version of the code that it gives me, and we know how accurate it always responds to everything.
Yes.
And it would do that detail. There's a lot of times where I'm utilizing AI. In fact, in this email, I utilize AI because I thought it would be kind of funny here to utilize AI to summarize the email, because it was a very long email. This person was very well read in this category.
Thank you very much for
awesome.
that long email, but we can't cover it on this show.
Yeah, I love the email, by the way. I love all the information. So I used the AI to try to condense it down into the main points. So here we go. So the summary of the main points is there are a number of open source projects that are working to address this issue. So there's a lot of projects that are seeing the problems like you mentioned, Michael. Nextcloud has done a pretty good job of addressing this in their own ethical AI rating system for AI integrations in Hub 4, which will have a link there to their ethical AI, which I'm not sure how I feel about this, because it looks more like a user-submitted rating system of just AI saying, yeah, this one's good or this one's bad. I'm not sure how effective that's going to be, but I love Nextcloud. I like what they do and represent. Maybe there's more to it than that, but that's what I gathered.
It's a good idea, at least. But having a rating system is good, but also who decides what is good or not is also important, because if you're not having someone actually go and check the ratings, then that could be a problem too, because people would just abuse that system.
Well, it's interesting. There was a Reddit post that was talking about ChatGPT having major privacy implications for people. That it does state right at the beginning that, hey, anything you put in here is basically going to be read by our developers, is going to be released to third-party apps for them to do studies on and information. And there's major privacy concerns with that. And there was an article written on it. The number one comment, the top comment, upvoted comment on Reddit for this was, I'm so sick of all these stupid privacy people creating all of these fake aluminum hat things. Every company already has your information. It doesn't matter. This is so dumb, blah, 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 blah. Just keep using AI and things. So when you look at an ethical rating system like this, the people who are probably going to spend their time researching it already are not ignorant of privacy. Yeah. Whereas the mass population still is extraordinarily ignorant about privacy and security and why it matters. And because of that, I don't know that this thing would be very effective, because unfortunately people just don't care. They're getting to that point where they think there's no option. Why care at all?
I've actually had recently some conversations with people who have said that phrasing of, they already have my data, I don't care, it's impossible to be private and stuff like that. And it's people who are not they're not necessarily super tech people, but they are tech aware, and it's still, it was kind of shocking that that's how it was. And there's even cases where I was talking to someone recently And I did convince them to do it after the fact, but they didn't have good passwords. So I was kind of thrown off by that because I had known that person for a long time and had been talked to them about password management as an option.
How dare you bring that up here, Michael? I liked my password of password123. I thought it's secure. Who's going to guess password is a password, you know?
Because no one would do that in their right mind, of course.
And then 1, 2, 3, like I threw those numbers in there.
The numbers is all you need that makes it secure.
Yeah,
exactly.
It makes it totally
but
secure.
For those who are curious, it's not Ryan.
We're jesting. Yeah.
But anyway, it does happen.
Going back to the feedback, actually the Linux Foundation has an AI and data consortium. And they would be a good one to do, the paper, the white paper on this, because it's a combination of a lot of different companies coming together, wanting the same things.
Here's my real fear. My fear is that ChatGPT and Google Bard and these things are so powerful, and they can save a lot of time, but they're so wrong a lot of the time. So I want to make those two distinctions. Today, they're still wrong a lot, but it's very, very powerful. Getting to the point where Microsoft is integrating ChatGPT into everything, into their Office suite, into their core operating system. It's basically when I said it was going to take over the search engine. I mean, I don't want to gloat, but I was right.
Yeah.
And so I start to ask myself, like, hey, is Linux going to have anything? Shut up, Michael. Don't call me out. Does Linux have anything that's going to compete in the open source world for this? Or is this another situation where it's kind of going to be one of those forced on you? It's like a Facebook privacy-wise. It has a lot of wrong information, but if you don't use it, you're going to fall so far behind technologically.
Yes.
That you're not going to be able to compete. And so I really hope there's something that happens in the open source community that's exciting here, but it's going to take a lot of money and a lot of resources, and it's going to need to come from one of those evil corporations that people don't like so much to be able to fund it. You're going to need
at
big,
least
giant
a
company.
consortium. Like if Linux Foundation had a grant from different companies to do something like that, that would be cool. I would love to see that sort of thing. So now we know Ryan's biggest fear, and mine is snakes.
Just like in Indiana Jones.
What?
That's what you said your biggest fear was.
Yeah.
Yeah. My biggest fear is snakes. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Like poisonous snakes or venomous snakes. Not all snakes. Some snakes are cute.
Gardener snakes are cute.
Oh my goodness. So an interesting project in the open alternative space, they go on to mention that they've come across is OpenAssistant.io. Project is associated with large-scale artificial intelligence open network, or LAION, whose tagline is truly open AI, 100% nonprofit, 100% free. So that's interesting. And it would be great to see that integrated in Nextcloud's Hub 4, which would be cool. And of course, there's still a bunch of proprietary stuff lower down in the training stack with NVIDIA's CUDA drivers and firmware that would also ideally be exciting for a full free Libra ML software stack to be included there. We're going to talk about something later on that may help with that. Mm-hmm. So that was about the insult Michael made to me earlier about my height, which, by the way, I'm not small. He's just freakishly tall. So just want to make that clear. He belongs in a circus.
That's true.
Aww.
When I'm at your house and we do a show together, there's a couple of people who have commented, and it's not because he's short. It's just I'm tall.
Yeah, he's really tall. He's freakishly tall.
It's not that bad.
He escaped from Barnum and Brothers.
Yeah.
And we brought him on this show. So, awesome email, Richard. You got the conversation with us going here back and forth, and you got us thinking. And we have people in the community who really spend their time to research and understand various subjects in ways that, as a show, we can't. And so bringing that information to us in our community, we appreciate it so much. So thank you, Richard. Appreciate it.
So, my first biggest fear, which is snakes. My second biggest fear is having a server that is not affordable and not reliable. But thankfully, we have a solution for that, and that is Linode. This episode of Destination Linux is brought to you by Linode. So visit linode.com/tux. That's linode.com/TUX. And see why over 1 million developers trust Linode for their infrastructure. From their award-winning support that's offered 24/7, 365 to every level of user, not just if you have a certain tier, it's all users, to the ease of use and setup. It's clear why developers and businesses have been trusting Linode for projects both big and small since 2003. Linode offers the industry's best price to performance value for all compute instances, including shared, dedicated, high memory, and GPU instances. Linode makes cloud computing simple, affordable, and accessible, allowing you to focus on your customers and not your infrastructure. So visit linode.com/tux. That's linode.com/TUX. And you're going to, when you go there, you're going to get a $100 60-day free credit when you sign up as a member of Destination Linode. So go to linode.com/tux. And did I mention you can get stuff from, you could build a servers that is simple to use in terms of like you just piece by piece build whatever you want, but also the app marketplace is awesome.
Yeah.
You just basically click a one-click app and you can set up very fast all sorts of things from Plesk and WordPress to Valheim and Minecraft servers. In fact, we have a Minecraft server for the community. So there's tons of cool things that you can do on Linode. So visit linode.com/tux to get that $100 60-day free credit at linode.com/TUX.
So this week, when I was thinking of the main topic for the show, the first thing I wanted to accomplish was a show topic that allowed me to say immutable as much as possible, because I just like the word.
I think you've nailed it then.
Thank you. It's a cool word, though. Don't you
It
agree?
is a fun word to say, immutable.
Awesome.
Immutable.
Immutable.
It's an
Yeah.
expensive word.
And actually,
Yes.
it's funny because I had never heard of that word until these things started popping up in the Linux ecosystem.
Yeah.
Just immutable desktops.
Lucky for me, the rumors buzzing in the community allowed me to create a show topic around immutable, so I can say immutable as much as immutably possible.
Oh, that's good. That's a good immutable timing.
Indeed, it is. So the rumor that's out there, and I want to be very clear that it's a rumor, because if I don't, Michael will jump on my back and do his thing like he did in the pre-show. I don't want to bring up the pre-show in the main show, but I'm going to. He was very rude, people.
I don't want to bring up the thing that I'm bringing up right now.
Yes, it was unbelievable.
Hey,
So-
Ryan, it's a rumor.
Yes, it's a rumor for everyone.
Not confirmed. It's a rumor.
The rumor is that Ubuntu's latest LTS version will offer an immutable variant alongside its standard variant, and the immutable variant will be entirely snap-based. Dun, dun, dun.
Yay.
Now, you might be...
We said dun dun dun, Jill. Yay! Like, that's
Were you saying
that's the
yay?
polar opposite, Jill.
Are you saying yay to the snaps, Jill, or yay to Michael and me's performance?
Oh, good question.
Yay to your performance.
Okay.
And for Ubuntu, even considering an immutable desktop, just like we have on Fedora
Okay,
and
perfect.
other distros.
All I heard was to our performance, and that's it.
Yeah.
Okay.
At that point,
We stopped listening.
Yeah, we stopped listening at that point.
We were gloating and patting ourselves on the back.
That was great. No, it was great.
Now, you might be thinking, wait a minute, doesn't Ubuntu already have an immutable variant called Ubuntu Core?
Yes, technically, kind of.
Yes,
not exactly the same
they
as
do.
what people think it is, but yes.
But Ubuntu Core, Michael, is geared towards Internet of Things.
Oh, IoT.
IoT, that clever little acronym there, IoT. So
EOT.
it's not for the desktop, it's for EOTs. And what is an example of an EOT, Michael? So people who don't know what an EOT is,
A Raspberry Pi is an EOT. You could put all sorts of stuff on that. Let's say, for example, you want to do a sensor to check your garden to see if it's got the water, the right water levels, or if you want to do a temperature sensor and that sort of thing. There's all sorts of EOTs. In fact, there's even things that you could do with like the Amazon devices or the Google devices, or Apple has their own EOTs. And there's tons of things.
isn't
That's
there a
the
rap
whole
song
point.
about EOTs? It's EA. It starts
That's
that,
almost
that song?
exactly that song. Yes.
Yeah.
I think I think we need to make a parody of that song and just make it the EOT version.
We have router EOTs and switch EOTs.
I like
Did
how
we
you're
just make up
embracing
a new word, by the way?
Yeah, I like how we're all embracing
I
the
love it.
ridiculousness I just said.
We're going to have
like it's
a
normal.
bunch of people walking into their company on Monday saying EOT when they're referring to
They're like,
things.
hey, we're going to
And
deploy some EOTs, everybody.
You guys, you know what this is reminding me of? 1D10T.
1D10T. What's the reference?
Oh,
I'm not going to say it.
it's the language thing.
Yeah.
It's like a language, like being for translations and stuff.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
It's between the keyboard and the
Oh, the issue between the keyboard and the monitor. You're saying we're idiots?
No, I don't get it. Apparently, there's a I've heard that is like the between chair and keyboard.
Yes,
You know?
that's exactly what it is. But
There's,
we
there's an acronym for that.
1D and the
PEPCAT.
number 10T.
Problem exists between chair and keyboard.
Oh, okay.
But
Gotcha.
instead of saying idiot, 1D, 10T.
It does remind you of idiot.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah, now you get it. I said it.
Wow.
Jill
You know what
is
the saddest
savage
thing
these
about that
days.
is that neither one of us got the idiot reference. If I had seen it written
Does that
down,
make us idiots because
no,
we don't
because
get the idiot
if you
reference?
because that's the whole thing about seeing it written down. If we saw it written down, it'd been fine.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. You saw it written
like
down.
very
you would
clear
know
written down.
exactly. It's
Michael, can
1D,
you
10.
Can I edit that part out so it don't sound ridiculous?
Yeah.
No, can you just do a fancy animation that has it spelled out right there? So
Yeah.
other idiots like us know what we're talking about.
Yeah,
All right,
back in the
100%.
80s when you're building computers, that was like.
I'm gonna have it
all
like
Steve
I'm gonna have it
said.
like show across the screen and then like have like a big explosion or something happen or
Yeah.
you know or maybe like
That
it's
would
gonna
be
be
great.
highlighted with some electric effects or I'm gonna make it very clear what it is to people.
I like how
Okay, you hadn't heard it before like that.
I've heard it, but I never heard anyone say it. You know, I've seen it
Yeah.
written down, but I've never heard anyone say.
what I like is the
okay.
fact that Michael did not want to look like an idiot. So he said, "No, it's this language model thing that
Dude,
does."
I thought it was because there is like a language thing that has 10 in it.
Oh my gosh, you're the
And I thought
biggest
she was-
idiot I've ever heard.
You're an EOT. How dare you?
Yeah.
How dare you try to call me out on my ridiculous? The worst part about this is I could have edited that part out where I didn't look stupid, and
Now
but
you
then you
can't.
brought it back up
That-
again. And then
why do you think I brought it
I
back
don't want
up?
to edit it now because it's too much.
No way. All right, let's move on to the Immutable OS.
Thanks, bro.
here.
You're such a good friend to me.
What is an Immutable OS? So, number one, it's read-only. The primary characteristics of Immutable OS is that the running system cannot be directly modified by its users or applications. Thus, the immutable part being read-only. Atomic updates are applied atomically, meaning they're successfully applied at all areas, not at all. So you either have the atomic update applied to everything, all your updates work and go through, or it just rolls entirely back.
It's like instead of like a piece by piece, the entire system is updated all at once.
Yep. It's predictable because the operating system doesn't change. Its behavior is predictable across all different types of devices. And you've got isolated applications that are isolated or containerized from each other, usually through containerization, but not always. And this ensures that the changes by the applications don't affect other core applications or the system itself. You can save previous versions. So the previous version of the system is always kept around just in case you need to roll back or go back in time. And it's more developer friendly in certain ways because you can keep multiple versions of your tools. So if you need that older version of a tool and then you need the newer version too, and you want them both, you can keep them independent from each other and unaffected by the base system or changes that happen
I would like
the
to go
base
back in time and use that previous version of this episode so I can remove the 1D 10T issue.
Unfortunately, DL is not immutable, you know?
Ah,
Yes.
we got to work on
Not
that.
read-only.
We got to figure that out. See if we can
Yeah.
make it.
Yeah. You got a 110DT.
It's 1D 10T. You didn't get it right. Come on. Try again.
Michael, you're the EOT here. Don't you be telling me what
no,
we
no,
have to
no,
do.
no, no, no. You're such an EOT. You didn't even get the EOT reference and stuff.
It's so PEPCAP.
What, Jill?
PEBCAP. It's problem exists between chair and keyboard.
What is wrong with you guys today? You know, what? Why are we throwing all of these random acronyms out there? Man,
You started it, Ryan, with EOT.
I mean, technically, I started it, but
Yeah, that's true. I am sorry. Michael started
Michael, what?
it. Like,
Michael's such an EOT.
I
He
want
wants
my
for
credit.
that.
I want credit for my ridiculous acronym that no one ever says.
I love it. Yeah.
because I enjoy nonsense.
Can we
you
get
know?
an EOT shirt in our marketplace, please?
Yes.
That's great.
Be-
Great
We'll also
idea.
have like a phonetic spelling underneath it. It's like
Yes,
in parentheses
the E.
EOT, you know?
Yeah.
All right, so Fedora Silverblue is a very popular mutable desktop that offers all the above features and leverages RPM OS tree, which is a hybrid image packaging system, and it combines the libOS tree and libDNF to provide atomic and safe upgrades with the RPM layering system. So a lot of fancy words to say all of that stuff we said about being immutable and read-only.
That's how it's done.
Yeah, exactly. And the applications that it uses are Flatpaks, which makes sense because those are mostly containerized, and Toolbox for Development easily create OCI containers, which are fully integrated in your host system, enabling seamless usage of GUI and CLI tools. And of course, in this Fedora Silverblue, you get the GNOME desktop. And like all Immutable OSs, Silverblue is installed. It's read-only image, and any changes are made on a separate layer. This makes it difficult for attackers to modify the operating system files. It also makes it easier to roll back. So when you look at this, it's like, why aren't we all using an immutable operating system? And by all, I specifically mean especially Michael, who your biggest complaint is, hey, I have an application. That application can't change. So I don't do updates. Therefore, I'm a security nightmare. Why don't you use an immutable?
Okay, for people who remember, when Ryan says stuff about me, sometimes it is made up. He just makes things up. This is partly one of those. Partly. Some of it's true. Some of it's not true. But I do updates, just not as much as you probably should. But also, it's not all my machines. What version of Fedora
were you on when you came to my house? Which was just 3 weeks ago. What version of Fedora were you on?
So for reference to people, is that Fedora 38 is the latest version of Fedora. That laptop has Fedora 38 on it.
Now, but what version did it have
when I first got there? 35.
35.
That's like 2 years.
When Michael tells you I make up stories, remember, he's just being an EOT. Doesn't want to admit the truth.
No, he's being an EOT because he's ignoring the other computer that I have. Actually, I haven't updated either. Let's move on. So...
There's also, Michael, you're like, hey, I'm not going to use Silverblue because it uses GNOME desktop.
No, that's not the issue, because there's also Fedora Kinoite, which is a KDE Plasma version of the immutable desktop from Fedora. The reason I don't use the immutable thing is because some of the applications I need to use are not available as Flatpaks and don't run properly in the immutable thing. So if everything I needed to use was a Flatpak, I would see no reason not to use the immutable options. But unfortunately, some of the things that I need to use do require more higher level permissions than Flatpaks can offer.
Yeah.
Always an excuse with you. Always an excuse.
No.
Always an excuse, because that's what EOTs do.
No Flatpak or Snap for DaVinci Resolve yet. So
yeah. But wait, there's also CoreOS. This immutable thing is becoming confusing. We have CoreOS 2. It's not made for the traditional desktop. So I guess
these are all Fedora related things as well. That's not even talking about the other immutable options. Like the CoreOS is not it's more of like a workstation type of.
Why does Fedora need 80 different versions? I may have exaggerated by 76, but why do they need 80 different immutable?
Well, I mean, you obviously need, if you can't stop it, you can't just stop at 76. You got to go up to 80. But the reason is they have different purposes. I mean, obviously the difference between Fedora Kinoite and Fedora GNOME or Fedora Silverblue is the GNOME versus KDE Plasma. So those are big differences, and you wouldn't be able to do an immutable system and have two different DE options. You wouldn't be able to switch back and forth. That would kind of defeat the point of immutable. So if you're going to do an immutable system and you want to offer a desktop that's not the typical, GNOME or the typical Plasma, then you need to have multiple options in that sense. And I think that's like the best way, because when you're doing immutable, one of the benefits of developers is that the maintainers for the distros have to do less, because they don't have to make sure that every configuration, every tweak, or everything that you could possibly do as a tinkerer could mess up the system, because the system that you have is the system they have, because it's not changeable. So there's even benefits to doing it on the maintainer side. So I think ultimately, in the long run, everything will be immutable, but it will be, I don't know how long it's going to take to get to that point, but I think that that's the best approach eventually. Now, there's because the reduced flexibility. Now, think about Jill's use case.
Jill customizes everything and then uses rat poison for fun, for instance, as example, as a desktop environment.
That's true. Well, we could have a rat poison version of Fedora rat poison.
Yeah. Fedora rat poison. But there are some drawbacks to this immutable thing. You've got the reduced flexibility, so users can't just modify system files or customize. Like you said, right now I could go from GNOME to KDE and install that myself and switch back and forth. But in Immutable Silverblue, if I decide I don't like GNOME now, I want to go to KDE, I can't. I have to reinstall my whole OS, in this case using Kinoite. Or if I want to use XFCE, I can't, right? Entirely can't, because there is no version for XFCE.
I don't think they have an XFCE version for Fedora, but they are building a budgie version, so that's cool. But there also could be other versions as well. And I think you got a good point about the flexibility. I wasn't thinking about that because once I have my system set up, I just leave it alone. And at this point, I kind of just stick to the defaults of most of the defaults. Now, if I couldn't change,
welcome to my side of the bridge.
Now, no, not all defaults. If there's certain things that the defaults are nice and certain things the defaults are not nice. So like the KDE Plasma's defaults in Fedora are better than the regular Plasma defaults. And the same thing with Kubuntu. They have good defaults. And I'm okay with using those defaults. And however, if I was in a situation where I couldn't change even the basics of the configuration of the DE, that could be a problem for me because I want to have custom shortcuts for certain applications and certain features that I'd want. If I couldn't change that, that would be somewhat problematic. So I could see like there would be some issues there. So if there was like
I'm sure
a layer
you could change
system,
shortcuts and stuff, although I haven't tried. I didn't actually try that when I was playing with Silverblue this week, but I'm sure you could change shortcuts. I'm just not sure you could change desktop environments.
if you could change the basic level of configuration, I think that's totally fine.
Yeah.
And I could probably get away with that.
It would be perfect for certain situations. Like we have, your computer for the setup for doing the show. This would be a great example of, hey, we don't want things to change. We want stuff to stay the same. This would be great for Immutable. Now, in Jill's case, where you want a desktop that you can customize and play with different things, test different DEs, test all the applications, review on the show, probably not the best environment for the containerized.
Counterpoint, Jill, what if you could have a bunch of different Immutable options and then play with them at any time and then have like the underlying core being swap outable? Because if you can swap the entire system, in theory, you could swap the entire image with another image and still have your data, maybe.
This is true.
That's kind of a cool.
Yeah. And I've actually thought about what if, my favorite X window managers are containerized, like, Next Step, After Step, Window Maker, Rat Poison. That would be interesting. Having a containerized desktop and then having the containerized apps on top of them.
That'd be cool. Okay, we need to talk to some developers and see if it's possible to create a Fedora or an OpenSUSE or an Ubuntu base level thing that doesn't include the DE, and then you have another read-only layer of the DE that sits on top, and you just transition that out. And if you could do that,
or you could just run a VM, you could
do that, but that's not the same thing as containerization. That's almost the same thing, but slightly different thing. And what I'm thinking is like being able to like at any point in time just take one piece and replace it with another and have a whole other experience.
Interesting.
Because that would be the safest way. Because always people to talk about like, distro hopping, but I want to use this different desktop environment. And, I've seen a lot of people on Reddit and forums and stuff talk about how they install different desktop environments. And that's not necessarily the best thing to do because some of them have conflicts with others. And, it gets kind of messy in that situation. But if you could just take a containerized desktop environment and swap it in and out, like that would be awesome.
Yeah, you could just go to the login manager and Window Maker, for instance, and it's just a container that you open up. It's interesting.
So other drawbacks, you've got limited compatibility with certain applications. With Michael, you mentioned there's certain apps that you wouldn't be able to utilize. Storage requirements, you gotta have lots of space. And Michael, you're constantly out of space.
My idea of even doing the different desktop environments, that would be taking up a ton of space on top of it.
Because of snapshots.
And for snapshots, and also just because of the fact that it's all combined into one. So there might be some extra pieces that are duplicated in certain cases. And there's all sorts of stuff. And for those who are curious, if I have enough space on my system to do this, I currently have 8 gigs left.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, we better hurry with the show.
We should hurry with the show.
All up right here. So an interesting thing, if all this Immutable stuff is making your head spin, this may help give you some foundation. The most popular Immutable OS right now that people are probably familiar with would be Chrome OS, Google's entry into the desktop market. So Chrome OS prioritizes security by utilizing that read-only operating system and sandboxes its applications and processes along with hardware-backed encryption and has verified boot system, etc. So this is probably one of the most popular when you talk about consumer market options out there would be Chrome OS. It utilizes the same methodology, and we know Chrome OS has a Linux kernel somewhere in there, deep buried underneath all the Google crap on top of it. So I think that would be a good reference point for you. And that's one of the reasons why Chrome OS is considered so secure is because of that read-only file system that it has there.
And you can't install hardly anything. There's that too.
Yeah. And Fedora, well, you can once you install Linux in it.
Once you replace it, like you basically unlock the Chrome OS-ness of it.
Yeah, then you could do all kinds of cool stuff. Fedora Silverblue follows a similar upgrade mechanism as Chrome OS via a tool called OS Tree, which does the full system images are downloaded in the background, and then when an update is available, and users simply boot into them once they're installed. So that's where the space taking comes in. You'll have two versions for a period of time of the system, the entire system. So you could always
like A/B updates and A/B testing. So you can have two different versions, and one is being updated while the other one is not. And if something goes wrong, it could always revert back to the other one. So it's very cool and very useful, but you would need a significant amount of space. So at the moment I couldn't use that. Really.
Now, our patrons are mentioning, in fact, it's Zeb specifically in our patron chat, which makes me happy. Just to say, so those who've been with us for a long time know Zeb was a host of this show for a while. So he mentions OpenSUSE having options here, specifically Kalpa.
Yes. So Kalpa and no, I don't remember what this is, but OpenSUSE Kalpa and OpenSUSE Aeon, I'm not sure how you're supposed to say that, is the Kalpa is for KDE Plasma and Aeon is for GNOME. And it's essentially like OpenSUSE's version of Fedora Silverblue and Kinoite.
It's Micro OS plus KDE plus Kalpa.
Right. So Micro OS was OpenSUSE has had a project called Micro OS, which is essentially immutable desktops. And there's tons of different versions of Micro OS. And they had Micro OS GNOME and et cetera, et cetera. But they decided to rename and create these new projects specifically for the purpose in the way that Fedora Silverblue does, where it's OpenSUSE's Aeon is GNOME, OpenSUSE Kalpa is the version of KDE Plasma.
Gotcha. Okay, so everyone's kind of doing the same thing. So when we go back to that original rumor, and it still is a rumor, that Ubuntu is going to create a desktop version, because the version they have out now is meant for IoT devices, but they're going to create a desktop version. They're going to create a desktop version. It makes more sense that they would, because everyone else is. So
yeah,
when in doubt, do what everyone else does.
Exactly.
You know? Yeah.
Exactly. Copy everyone. That's what the I mean, it is a good idea in general, so I'm curious to see if they do make it. I would be curious to see how they make it, because the IoT or the EOT version is more stripped down so that it fits well on these kinds of devices. So it's not meant to be like a full desktop. So if they do make a full desktop of it, it'd be very interesting to see. Now, we've seen people who talking about it in the rumor side saying it's confirmed, but there's not really full confirmation, because they said there's going to be a desktop version of Ubuntu Core, and that could be just Ubuntu Core modified a little bit to be a desktop versus actually making a full-blown desktop rendition that the Debian-based Ubuntu has. So we'll see in a couple releases what happens. But
I'll play with it when it comes out, because I played with Fedora Silverblue. I didn't get a ton of time with it this week, but besides the ISO being named differently, the installer felt exactly the same. Like, I had to check, no joke, that I actually loaded the right ISO, because I was like, this just seems like Fedora. It just looks like Fedora. It's the Fedora installer. So everything was the same there. Same options post-install to enable third-party repositories, to do your user setup, all of those things. The first difference, the only time I noticed, hey, I'm in something different, is when I opened the terminal and got this prompt. It said, welcome to Fedora Silverblue. This terminal is running on the host system. You may want to try out the toolbox for a directly mutable environment that allows package installation with DNF. So you mentioned, Michael, there are certain packages you won't have available because of Flatpak, but you do have a mutable environment through Toolbox in Silverblue that you could utilize to potentially install some of those applications.
That's cool. So
that
you can
need.
That's awesome.
install them in their own separate container. That's interesting.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to play with it some more. I think there's some really interesting things, and I'm sure they've thought about workarounds and things for various packages. Flatpaks has made so much available to it nowadays that it's becoming more tempting to just I'll just use Flatpaks the entire time, because most of the software I use is available as a Flatpak. It's not fully there, but it's darn close.
It's close. Yeah.
So ultimately, I guess the question is, Michael and Jill, should people be switching to Fedora Silverblue, OpenSUSE, Micro OS, or one of these other varieties out there? Is this something we should distro hop to?
Yeah. So personally, I think most Linux users should use a traditional desktop using apt or DNF, or you can use a Fedora Silverblue and still use DNF in
the toolbox,
sandbox. Yeah. And, but this actually, it just allows for greater flexibility, allows you to tinker with your desktop more. And honestly, applications run faster.
Yeah.
So when speed is an issue, you really want to install those packages locally.
Yeah, I think it depends on what people need to do with their systems. Yeah.
Exactly. The immutable desktops are still a work in progress, but there's actually another company that is doing it quite well, and that is Valve with the amazing Steam Deck and their SteamOS.
Yes, and that's another great example of an EOT for the Steam Deck. Because it's
Internet
made
of
for the
Things.
Steam Deck, and it is exclusively for the Steam Deck, and therefore EOT. Exactly.
Yeah. I've just been, after using the Steam Deck's immutable Flatpak-based Arch Linux with the Plasma desktop for over a year now. I've been using it to do show notes, to do research for the show. I've been very impressed with how stable and easy it is to use and install apps.
But you're using it on the Steam Deck, right?
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
Very cool.
Yeah, that's very cool.
And one of the things I actually do is I have a VM with Debian installed and one with Ubuntu installed. So when I want to use apt, I can.
And you're doing all of this on a gaming device. The Steam Deck.
Exactly.
That's pretty
Very
awesome.
cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
And another thing I wanted to point out is when we interviewed Mark Shuttleworth on Destination Linux episode number 322, I actually said to him that I think the immutable desktop is the future of Linux and how snaps were ahead of their time. So this announcement about a possible Ubuntu LTS snap doesn't surprise me, and it's kind of amazing that it came right after we interviewed Mark Shuttleworth.
That seems to be happening to us quite a bit. Like we have stuff happens right after we do something.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's good, like this. And sometimes
is it a coincidence, or are we that powerful?
I think it's the powerful. Yes.
Yes. Zeb has this to add about should users be using it or not in our Patreon room. They are not for new Linux users. They are not even for seasoned Linux user if that user is not technically minded. Simple answer. No, these are the ultimate geek desktop, so it's for very seasoned users.
I disagree. I think these are great for people who don't want to do any tinkering and don't want to do anything. They just want the system to run, and when they do updates, they want that update to just go behind the scenes and do everything it needs to do.
They want the Chrome OS experience.
Yes, if they want the Chrome OS experience where they don't really have to do anything, they just use the system as it is, and all the stuff that they need to use is available to them in that platform, like as a Flatpak or whatever, and the speed of which it loads or whatever isn't that big of a deal to them, then they are perfectly capable of using that system without any issues. I think that is a good use case. It's not going to be great for everyone, for sure, and there's going to be certain applications that I can't use it because of certain applications I need, like DaVinci Resolve is not available in these kinds of platform or like Flatpak stuff or anything. So I wouldn't be able to do it. But in terms of someone who just wants to use their system that just casually browses the internet or checks their email and that sort of stuff, I think it's totally fine for them.
Well, the problem is, I would agree with you, other than the fact that the applications not being available would become an issue potentially for new users who may go in there and think Linux is.
I mean, I'm not
just
saying
as
new
powerful.
users in general. I mean,
and then
like some
Toolbox is cool, but there was no GUI for Toolbox. Toolbox is the terminal commands that you run to create a Toolbox environment. Once you're in that environment, then you can start using DNF, and you could have multiple environments, immutable environments and things. This is very complex stuff that
Yes.
I'm not sure a new user or even someone who's just a casual user would find really welcoming.
Okay, my
unless
argument
you had
is-
a technical mindset.
My argument is to say that you could set up a system for someone else. Let's say it's like your grandparents or something, and
Yeah.
all they want to do is like web browser. They can get a Firefox from the Flatpak or the FlatHub. They can get Thunderbird from the FlatHub and use an email, or they could use webmail and use Gmail or whatever. Like there are certain situations or use cases that you don't need to mess with it, and for those people, I think it's a good option. So because you don't have to worry about the updates breaking their system because it's a completely separate system that you can easily revert if you need to. And I think that's a really cool approach to those types of users. Now, for most other users, probably not. I think that it becomes more complicated when you start trying to mess with stuff that's not beyond the simplistic basics.
Here's the other problem, and if anybody's going to overcome this, it might be Ubuntu here, which is Zeb was mentioning issues in OpenSUSE Kalpa with drivers, being able to install NVIDIA drivers and get their NVIDIA card
that
to
would be a
work.
problem.
I didn't even think about the driver problem. Now, Ubuntu has been one of the companies that's willing to they've got a partnerships or at least some type of partnership with NVIDIA and get away with shipping their proprietary drivers. But most distros stay away from that entirely and make the user do it, which creates a problem because install video drivers, you're going to have to change the system files, and to change the system files in Immutable isn't possible. So
I'm going to retract what I'm saying a little bit. I still think it's true. If they have the perfect amount of hardware configuration and compatibility, and they only want basic stuff, and they just want it to update automatically and all that stuff, then yes, it's great. It's
you know
perfect
what
for
you
those
remind
people.
me of right now, Michael, is an EOT.
Yeah.
You know what's funny is that when you asked the question earlier, like should people use this, and I wanted to say it as a joke, but I don't believe it at all. Which is like, yeah, you're an EOT if you don't, but actually,
you might be an EOT if you do.
I'm not
don't
saying that
understand
either.
The limitations.
Definitely not.
Okay.
If you don't know what kind of limitations there are, you might be running into some issues. But if you know what they are, or someone who's using it doesn't need a lot of configuration and doesn't a lot of needed changes or anything like that, then I think it's good. But otherwise, maybe not.
I think we'll get there. I think this is still very much in the
absolutely.
early stages. Obviously, there's an interest here from developers, from the distro creators to have these options available. And if the community is interested in them, go test them out in a testing environment. You can just put them in a VM and those things. Then you don't have to worry about using it on your main machine. But I think that's fascinating. I like some of the cool things when I compare it again to Chrome OS. There's some really cool ideas there. The containerization, the rollback capabilities, the security that you get. But there's obviously some limitations like with drivers and things that need to be overcome. So we'll see. But hopefully now you understand a little more about the immutable operating systems. And I know a lot of people are very passionate about them out there who are certainly going to write us after this episode and give us lots of information of why.
I think all the things that they're going to say is, yes, we agree with you, people. We agree.
Yeah, that would
That's
be
all
the
they're
right
going to
thing
say. That's
say.
all the comments we're going to get is you nailed it right on the head. Perfect coverage
Every time.
of Immutable OS. Yes.
Yeah. So don't be an EOT and use password 123 as your password. Use a complex password. And to set complex passwords, you need a password manager. And this episode of Destination Linux is brought to you by the greatest password manager, Bitwarden. Get started right now with your free account at bitwarden.com/TUX. A password manager as software allows you a peace of mind knowing your online accounts are secure. Bitwarden provides you with the tools to store all your passwords in a secured vault, auto-generate those passwords and usernames for you, even automatically fill them in for you on the form so you don't have to. You can access your data across many types of devices like your web browser, mobile apps, desktop applications, even on the command line. You got Immutable OS, it's fine. You can still use Bitwarden there as well. Bitwarden seals and encrypts your private data with end-to-end encryption before it ever leaves your device, so you know you're the only person with access to your data. Go to bitwarden.com/tux to get started for absolutely free, but for $10 a year, not per month, not per week, not quarterly, just a year, $10 a year. You're going to get a gigabyte of encrypted file storage, 2-step login with YubiKey U2F Duo, all health reports, Bitwarden Authenticator, priority customer support, less than $1 per month. Get Bitwarden. Go to bitwarden.com/TUX. Let them know we sent you. And thanks again for Bitwarden for sponsoring this episode of Destination Linux.
It's about that time in the show where it's time for everyone to rise. There you go, Ryan.
I'm very tall, Michael.
Okay.
Like 6'8", 10, 12. I'm 5'12".
I'm 5'1" and a
5'12".
half.
There you go.
All right. So, for those who are not aware of this, the RISE is the name of the RISC-V or a software ecosystem project, which is a collaborative effort led by industry leaders and the Linux Foundation with a mission to accelerate the development of open source software for the RISC-V architecture. So, what they want to do is accelerate the development of open source software for RISC-V, raise the quality of RISC-V platform software implementations, and push the RISC-V software ecosystem forward and align ecosystem partners' efforts. So basically, this is the concept of taking this architecture and not only just having the effort put on the hardware side, but also have an effort on the software side to make it more viable to use RISC-V architecture hardware.
So the reason I mentioned earlier that the comment Richard gave us would relate to one of the stories later in the show is because of this. Because RISC-V, for those who don't know, is a free and open source instruction set architecture. It's designed to be very efficient and flexible, and it kind of would replace the x86 architecture out there if it was able to take off, or at least complement the x86 architecture out there. And the Linux Foundation's initiative aims to promote RISC-V in a variety of applications, cloud computing, network embedded systems, and of course, AI, of course, could be part of that. So you would run...
And of course, EOTs.
EOTs. You got to have EOTs in there somewhere.
Absolutely.
So normally when people create these kind of groups and clubs and things, it can either be really powerful group of folks, or it can be more, I don't know, just... hey, we got a bunch of random people together, and
you see these people who are attached and go, oh, that's nice.
Yeah, it's more suggestive than anything. But the partners are pretty big here. Like you've got Google, you've got Intel, Imagination Technologies, MediaTek, NVIDIA. Mm-hmm. What's going on over there, NVIDIA? Does someone want to let us know it works for NVIDIA?
Like sometimes NVIDIA's doing cool things that like
sometimes.
How does this? I mean, what changed NVIDIA? We're curious.
By the way, NVIDIA. If you want to allow people to, have immutable operating systems grow faster, maybe you could open source your video drivers, and we wouldn't have this problem
just
to begin with.
That.
Yeah, just a thought. Like if you could be like AMD and Intel there. Qualcomm, Red Hat, Samsung, Sci-Fi, and Ventana Microsystems. Mm-hmm. So those are all the companies that have partners that have come together so far to kind of push RISC-V. And this is very exciting, I think, for a lot of people. We're very hopeful that we'll have open hardware architecture in the future.
This is really cool to see all these partners involved in this, because it doesn't seem like a very risky situation then.
Yeah. Well, the reason I am very excited about RISE...
Got the face palm, yeah.
So the reason I was so excited about RISE, I've been using RISC hardware for years. I had my DEC Alpha, I have my SunSpark machines, and I knew that RISC was the future. And now it's finally coming to fruition, having low-cost RISC systems that don't cost $20,000. And their performance is incredible compared to how much power they need. So very, very efficient. And they're very good at tasks which involve like rendering animation and AI for specific pipelines. The RISC chip is really good for that. And we need more applications on RISC-V. The open source version of RISC. We need more applications developed for these systems, because this is the future. It really is the future of computing, is the RISC.
It's really interesting. We talk about on Hardware Addicts some of the changes Intel's making on their upcoming processors, of course, x86 architecture, but the uphill battle they're all facing from AMD and Intel to compete with what Apple's doing with the ARM and the Apple Silicon, because of the battery life, the energy efficiency, the GPU power alone is insane. It's literally insane. It's so good. And I know a lot of people hate that it is, but we can't change the fact that it is as good as it is. So we need something to compete with that. I think Intel needs something to compete with that. I think AMD needs something to compete with that, and they're trying to do big little architecture changes and other things with x86 to make it more energy efficient and more powerful, but they really haven't put anything out there that has been able to compete. But we'll see in their next generation if they'll have that here. So I agree with you.
RISC-V would
It's
be a
very
good
important.
option to switch to for these
It would be
companies.
very important. Potentially, definitely some ARM-based stuff. But you know what cracked me up, Michael, is Jill reminded me of MKBHD or Marquise Brownlee's videos.
Oh,
you know
yeah.
how in the comments when he gets a new device, he's like, the device hasn't even come out yet, and he starts the video with, so I've been playing with this for a month, and Jill's talking about already using RISC-V when most people are just talking about the theory of utilizing a RISC-V device. It just had that moment. It reminded me of
we should have just immediately both said, of course you do, Jill.
I thought it in my head.
Yeah,
I definitely thought it in my head. So I think it's really awesome that you're already kind of playing with that. And there are a few options out there for people who want to try RISC-V, a few hardware options available.
Pine 64 is one of them.
Pine 64. So Dave Patterson, a professor of electric engineering computer science at University of California, Berkeley. I knew this one would speak to you, Jill, there in California. The Linux Foundation's initiative is a major step forward for the RISC-V ecosystem, and Patterson is one of the inventors of the RISC-V instruction set architecture there. So they're excited about this, and Michael Barr, the chief operating officer of Sci-Fi, a leading RISC-V chip design company, said that the Linux Foundation initiative is a vote of confidence in the RISC-V ecosystem, and Sci-Fi is one of the companies that's working with the Linux Foundation on this initiative. So hopefully this helps make RISC-V more of a reality here in the near future.
Yeah, it sounds very promising, and I hope it does happen because, it sounds like a really good alternative for these companies, and also just an alternative because we've been using x86 for a long time. And we also knew that there was a bottleneck that x86 was going to have, and we're kind of close to it.
It's time to rise.
It's time to rise.
Time to rise. Exactly.
All right, Jill, take us into the gaming section here and let us know what kind of game we're looking at this week.
Cool. So the game this week is one where you play as a really cute retro arcade style robot. The game is called Lost Bits.
Cute. That's a good
It's really
name.
cute. Yeah, it's adorable.
I think Ryan has lost a lot
Adorbs.
of bits.
Yes.
You're such an idiot.
So a 1D10T. No, I'm sorry.
Not again.
No, let's not go. I'm sorry.
We got that reference, Ryan. We both got that reference that time.
No.
Yay.
So Lost Bits is a free 2.5D retro platformer where you join M1LO, the robot, on his quest for the Great Legume.
His name is Milo, Ryan.
His name is Milo.
That's like those vanity plates that people have,
Yes.
and they put the M1L0.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
It's so funny that that's a theme for the show today.
That works out perfectly with this.
Yes, it does. So you explore a sunken battleship, grapple through a construction site, and fight the computer's operating system in this short but wonderful, sweet game.
It must be running Windows.
Yeah, I was going to say, it must be Windows 11.
Yeah.
Fighting with it.
And there's 4 areas to explore. There's over an hour of gameplay and upgrades and unlockable abilities. And yes, it's free. So
I would hope so, with only 4 areas to explore.
yeah.
99 cents are free, something.
Yeah. No, it's an amazing game for being free. I actually love the chiptunes soundtrack and how it really integrates seamlessly with the 16-bit visuals. It's really nice. The level designs are clever. The art direction and graphics are absolutely top-notch. And one thing that makes this game so unique is the combination of 2D and 3D graphics, such as when you acquire a new weapon, like a gun. When you're in the game, it switches to 3D visuals and keeps the same 16-bit art style. It was really fascinating on how good it did that, and how unique that is.
Yeah.
And there are actually 2 games on Steam with the name Lost Bits. This is the one that is lowercase lost bits. So don't get lost downloading the wrong bits.
Nice.
Don't be an EOT.
Yes.
Download
Don't
the
be
wrong
an EOT, people.
Or 1D10T. No.
Also, for those who are curious, chiptune is a type of genre that I like. It's it's like combination of EDM meets like MIDI sounds from games of like, the 80s and stuff.
Yeah,
What
people
a nerd.
manipulate their N64s and their old Sega systems and create sound on them. It's really
Thanks,
amazing.
bro.
So this game works beautifully on Linux and on the Steam Deck. And once again, it is free for you to download in the Steam store.
Nice. Our software spotlight this week is Please Run That. I mean it. That's the actual name is Please
That's the
Run
name
That.
of it is Please Run That. Yeah.
Yes. This software, I absolutely demand Michael installs this on his machine immediately.
What does this do, Ryan?
Well, it's a tool that lets a friend remotely execute commands on your machine.
No. I'm not
a friend,
installing this.
and I want to remotely execute commands on your machine.
I'm terrified by this idea. So I like that this is an option. I also like the name of it. It's like, oh, please run that.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
But,
it's a Python socket app for letting a friend execute a command on your system without even having to have an SSH server at all. A simple GUI. It has active development and works OOTB over the broadband.
Out of the box.
Out of the box.
What an EOT.
What an 1D10T.
So, Michael, will you install this on your machine? Please run that.
No. It's cool that this is existing, but because you could also use this as like a remote management of another system of your own. So there's that. But I like the way it's promoted as like,
Get a friend to install.
get a friend to do stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, Michael doesn't have an immutable desktop, so this could really do some damage.
Exactly. I mean, I would never do that. I would just update his system. I would
You would
just
just update
literally
my system. Oh, that's nice.
run the
I can
update.
give you access for that, because I'm not
okay.
doing it anyway. So you might as well.
someone do it for you.
Yeah, someone might as well do it.
A hacker actually helps you. They feel so bad for you. They're like, oh, let me just help them out.
Like, oh wow, this is really out of date. You should update this.
All right, so a big thank you to each and every one of you for supporting us by watching or listening to Destination Linux. However you do it, we love your faces. You can join us right now on Discord at tuxdigital.com/Discord. And if you want to watch this show live, you can become a patron of Destination Linux. In fact, I would say if you're not watching this show live, you might be an EOT.
You might be an EOT. Well, actually, I disagree because anyone who's watching this show live, thank you for watching the show. You are not an EOT. You can ignore Ryan completely. But if you do want to become a patron, you can go to tuxdigital.com/membership and get a bunch of perks, not just watching live. Yes, that's an awesome perk, but we have also a lot of other perks when you become a patron and get that membership. You can also get access to unedited versions of the show because maybe you can't watch it live, but you still want to have the experience of seeing all of wonderful elements of the show, the banter, the
mistakes.
No, we don't make mistakes. These are happy accidents, happy little accidents. So all these great things that you could watch if you wanted to become a patron, you get access to those unedited versions of the show. And for those that can watch live, you also get access to the patron-only post show, which happens every week after the show. So go sign up, become a member, tuxdigital.com/membership. Also, if you want to get some cool swag, like we have tons of cool stuff at the Tux Digital store. There's hats, mugs, t-shirts, hoodies, stickers, coasters, all sorts of great stuff. tuxdigital.com/store.
And if you go there right now, Michael will have already released our famous limited edition EOT shirt. So go
That is
check
100%
that out.
Yes.
not true, but I will try to
Don't
do
be an
it.
EOT and miss the chance to get that shirt. Keep checking the store throughout the whole week.
Throughout
'Cause
the
it's-
week, you cannot
Yes.
miss this. It's one special edition, one of a kind EOT shirt.
And make sure to check out all the amazing shows here on Tux Digital. Right, Jill?
Yes. We have the Pseudo Show, This Week in Linux, the DOS Geek Channel, Linux Out Loud, Hardware Addicts, Linux Saloon, and our newest show, To Keep Your Bodies and Minds Fit, fit and fueled. Everyone head to textdigital.com and subscribe to all these great shows. And don't forget to leave a rating on your favorite app so others can discover the power of open source and keep those penguins marching in the full Monty of Linux and open source awesome sauce.
Everybody have a great week, and remember that the journey itself is just as important as the destination.
Thanks, everyone.
See you next week.